Hello, this is Diesel from SARS Furnace and Legion of the Rogue Dragon. Today we are going to talk about traits, about world versus world traits specifically. Normally whenever I'm doing a tutorial kind of video for world versus world, I sort of write out what I want to say, general kind of broad stroke talking points, and then I go over them in the video, ad lib, I guess. With traits, I didn't do that because honestly, it's pretty basic and simple. And what I mean by that is that once you get a basic grasp on how they work and how they function, you're good to go. Most of what you need to know about traits can be learned by just reading them. But obviously, if you're extremely new to World versus World, you need a little bit of guidance on what you should be doing first. That question is asked almost every time we go into World versus World. Somebody wants to know, what should I do with these first couple of trait points I got tonight while we were out there? And we have some suggestions for you. Specifically, these suggestions are for my guild, Legion of the Rogue Dragon. Your guild may have some different suggestions and recommendations and requests for you as far as traits go. Ask your guild leader, ask your guild commander, see what they want you to do. But specifically, like I said, regarding my guild, what I would like you to do when you first get into World versus World and you get those trait points is to focus on 3 trait lines to begin with. And the way I see it, by the time you get these trait lines to the point where we want them, you will no longer need guidance as far as what traits you need to do next, because you'll have spent enough time in World versus World to know what you like and what you don't like. What siege do you like to man? What siege do you hate to man? Obviously, the ones you like to man are going to be the ones you're going to focus on. There are a little bit of class kind of specifications here, specificity, I guess. For example, if you're a heavy, most of the time we want you on the Rams. Heavy meaning, a guardian, a warrior, or a class that maybe a lighter class, but that is built for being tanky, something that can take a huge beating. We want you on the Rams because you're going to last a very long time on the Rams. Therefore, you're going to want Ram Mastery, and we will talk about that. First, let's talk about my suggestions, my requests. Please run these when you first get into World versus World. I would like you to have build master, up to rank 2, up to tier 2. And the reason I would say not to go any higher to start with is the way supply is used for each animation of building something. It's going to use however much supply you have here in the trait line. And until you get up to the max, which is more points than you can afford to spend early on, you're still going to have 2 animations. So the best way to do it is hit rank 2. That way you're guaranteed to only have 2 animations for building siege, for draining that 10 supply. Now oftentimes we run the +5 buff. We will get into that in the supply camp and supply usage and acquisition tutorial. But basically, what you need to know right now, get your build master up to rank 2, and then get your repair master up to rank 2 for the same exact reasons as the build master. Because of how supply is used and how much you have in total, you want to get those animations down to 2 hits to get something built and or repaired. Next thing, when you've got build master to rank 2 and repair master to rank 2, I would like you to get supply master to rank 4, and only rank 4. Don't bother getting rank 5. The reason is, unless you're a commander, you're not going to be dropping siege pretty much ever. I mean, if you're going out kind of by yourself or with a group of friends, or if you get an icon, by the time you get a commander icon, you should know all about the traits and everything. But basically, someone who's just starting out in World versus World, and most people who play it regularly even don't have a reason to drop siege a lot of times. There are exceptions to the rule, of course. I'm not saying that unless you have a commander icon, you'll never ever drop siege, but for the most part, you won't, especially in Guild Zergs, especially in our Guild Zerg. So what the 5th trait is deployed siege sites are invulnerable for short duration. Ergo, useless to you unless you are dropping siege frequently. So to recap, build master rank 2, repair master rank 2, supply master rank 4, and you will be extremely beneficial and group support oriented to the Guild Zerg. You'll be doing as much as you can trait wise, basically, to support whatever we're doing, whether we're defending or we're attacking or anything like that. You'll be using that supply in a very effective and efficient way. Let's talk about some of the extra stuff. What are my recommendations for the other trait lines? Well, I don't use cannon mastery because I don't use cannons. Most of the time, if the Zerg is large enough that we can't just rush out and wipe them immediately on the gate, and we have to use cannons, they're large enough to wipe the cannons before we get a chance to use them very effectively. They're large enough that the AoEs and the cannons will force you off, and you won't be able to stand there and use them for very long. So, and this might be a bit controversial, I think cannons are somewhat useless. Somewhat useless. I mean, small numbers, 5 guys go up and decide to drop a ram on a gate. Of course, cannons are going to be fantastic. You can wipe that siege and push them off. But when we're talking about guild Zerg fights, it's usually like, 20 versus 20, 30 versus 30, sometimes 40 versus 40, and anything in between. So cannons really aren't used that much for us, at least. So I don't have anything in cannon mastery. Ballista mastery. If you are using ballistas a lot, I absolutely recommend the very first rank at least. It gives you the spread shot skill, which fires 5 ballista bullets at the same time. Basically, if you hit someone with that at 0 range, at point blank, you will insta-down them. Doesn't matter what gear they're running, it doesn't matter what profession they are, unless they are invulnerable because of something like Endure Pain or some other skills on the other professions that render them invulnerable, they will go instantly in the down state. Great skill. Increases ballista damage by 25%, sounds great. Fires faster bolts, definitely good. They're very easy to kite unless they're upgraded. Increases range, definitely good. And increases shatterbolt radius, great. Shatterbolt does massive damage. Pretty great trait line all in all if you run ballistas a lot, which I personally don't, because if I'm in World vs. World, I'm usually commanding, and therefore I'm not on siege a ton. Arrow Cart Mastery, fantastic trait line. We talked about the Arrow Cart and the Arrow Cart tutorial and how amazingly useful they are in so many different situations, and the trait line makes them even more useful. Number 1, increases range on all arrow carts. Basically a necessity if you're going to use arrow carts, because a lot of times kind of the World vs. World siege placement meta has shifted so that a lot of the arrow cart placement is only put in places that is useful if you have the range increase. So if you don't have it, you won't be able to hit the places that arrow cart is placed to strike. Absolutely wonderful trait. Definitely get it. As soon as you're done with that basic stuff that we talked about in the beginning, check out the Arrow Cart Mastery, because we use Arrow Carts a lot. Everybody does. They're so great. Increases damage, obviously fantastic. Increases effectiveness of applied conditions, no complaints there, works very well. Increases radius on all air card skills, definitely great, definitely. Larger radius means you hit more people in a Zerg situation, no complaints at all. Toxic Unveiling Shot. Personally, I don't use it. I use it, to drop the poison on a Zerg so that they are less effective when healing, but I do not use it. I don't think that it's an amazing skill, let's put it that way. The cooldown is very, very long. Remove stealth, that's wonderful, except that it's not really a complete defense against, like, let's say a portal bomb or something like that, because the cooldown is so long that really all they'd have to do is happen to get lucky and not walk through it with that dropping, or if they know that it's dropping, wait it out, etc., etc. It's not the greatest skill. Honestly, I would not recommend getting it. Using the trait points for it, you can use them at other places to much more effectiveness. Burning Oil Mastery, what a joke! Sorry, that's my opinion. Burning oil is just awful. It's just one of those things where as soon as you get up to a gate, the first thing you do is drop oil. It's, I think it's a great idea to have oil in the game, but I think that, again, in a Zerg situation, in a guild Zerg situation, it is next to useless. We just never use it. If we're attacking, we often have a lot of people. If we're defending, we often have a lot of people. And we're usually defending against a lot of people that are just going to melt the oil right away. I do not use it. I would not recommend it. Mortar Mastery. Something that I don't use simply because I'm on the run a lot. If I'm attacking or defending in World vs. World or commanding in any way, I'm generally not worried about mortars. I'm worried about, let's get out there and wipe that Zerg. Let's drop an arrow cart, weaken them, go out there and wipe them and get it taken care of. I personally, as a character, do not man the mortar because I'm the commander and I have way a lot of other things to do than to sit on a mortar. If you like using mortars, which mortars are very, very strong and such a nightmare in heavy sieges, I mean, you basically have to go around and take out the mortars in a very upgraded keep, otherwise they're going to bite you in the butt. Sure. I mean, they all look pretty good. Certainly the blast radius is great. Increases the burn field duration, etc., etc. Just kind of take a look at them. Catapult mastery. We covered some of that in the catapult video, but we're going to talk about it here because this is the traits video. Great. Increases damage done by walls. Gravel shot now applies bleeding. Awful. And that's just because gravel shot is awful in every way. Please buff. Increases radius on all catapult skills. Sounds great. More radius, more damage to Zergs. I like it. I use it. You also get a higher chance of hitting multiple targets when it comes to, if you're just out of range, for example, for that second wall. If you're hitting two, that radius could help you out there, and it could hit more people if you're firing on a Zerg with it, which happens sometimes. Not impossible. Siege Bubble, fantastic skill. Kind of a long cooldown, but like I mentioned in that video, it's so great and so useful that you can't really expect it to have a short cooldown. It blocks all projectiles from any source, not only for the catapult and the user, but for everybody in that bubble area. So you can kind of bundle your entire Zerg in that spot if you see some heavy attack coming in, like a cannon shot or a mortar that's going to leave a long burning field, and pop that, and you're all good to go. Fantastic skill. I love it. Supply Master, we talked about it. Up to number 4, fantastic, wonderful, absolutely recommend. Number 5, not so much. Trebuchet Mastery. Trebuchets have been buffed. They are really good in a lot of different ways. I personally don't use them very much in my guild because they take so long and I'm very impatient. And I don't like to wait around for trebuchets to do their work, so I will often try to choose an alternative option. But they can be very, very useful. We have some people in the guild who have that trebuchet mastery fully filled up, so every time we do happen to drop one, they man them and they enjoy it. And trebuchet can be very strong. Again, just kind of look through these skills and just see if there's something you like. If you enjoy running trebs, definitely get it. Flame Ram Mastery. Absolutely necessary to have the first 3 tiers on that. Have to have them. Number 1, gains Ironhide while interacting. What that does is it halves all damage you take. So Aerocart does 1,000 damage to you per hit. Suddenly it does 500 damage to you per hit if you're on the ram. Fantastic, critical, necessary. Flame Blast now applies structural vulnerability. Applies an extra 1% damage per stack of structural vulnerability on the gate from all sources. From Zergs that are kind of PV dooring, from all the rams that are hitting it. Absolutely wonderful, critical, necessary. Number 3, reduces recharge on flame ram skills. Ergo, faster attack speed. Ergo, more damage on the gate in a shorter amount of time. Absolutely wonderful, critical, and necessary. Skill Impact Slam. It says on the description that it does more damage than a regular hit. It does not. As far as I know, I can't tell any difference. It appears to be the same exact damage as the number 1 shot on a ram. But it is nice to have, and mainly you get it so that you can get Iron Will. If I could keep my mouse on this. Iron Will, support skill that applies Ironhide to nearby allies. It sounds like exactly what it is. It takes that awesome buff that cuts your damage in half, and it applies it on, I think it's up to 5 people around you for like 3 or 4 seconds. It doesn't sound like very long, but if you're about to rush through a gate and there's a lot of Aerocart damage coming down on that gate, best thing to do is wait till just before the gate drops and then pop that Iron Will, and those people who are hit by it are going to... you're almost guaranteeing that they're going to get through those Aerocarts, even if they just have no idea what they're doing. Brand new level 1, ranger or clothy that is just going to take so much damage, they will almost guaranteed make it through because that Iron Will is just wonderful. Very, very good. Guard Killer. I do not use it. I would not recommend it. It takes 115 trait points, ranks, before it becomes super good. You're talking about 10% extra damage to guards, lords, and supervisors. Yeah, that's pretty nice. 10% is nothing to sneeze at, but again, 85 ranks just to get to that point. And the last rank is it adds power condition damage by 20 for each stack. So, you're talking about 5 stacks. It's just not enough. I mean, it's not enough to do anything. 100 power, 100 condition damage. I don't really know how else to explain it other than 3 stacks of might is going to do the same thing for you. I mean, that's what you're looking at. You're going to spend 115 ranks to get to that point, and you're going to get the same benefit as 3 stacks of might. If you have nothing else to spend your trait points on, let's say you're rank 1,000. First of all, thanks for watching my video. I mean, you know everything that I'm talking about anyway. But the point is, if you're rank 1,000, if you're rank 1,500, and you have everything unlocked, why not? Go ahead, get it, because you have no other choice really. But I would never ever say, hey, this is great, you should definitely use it, because it's just plain not. Again, applied fortitude, each stack grants 50 vitality, a max of 5. It's not a big deal, and you're talking about 115 ranks. If you start investing in it, you kind of have no choice but to continue, otherwise it's wasted points. At least that's the way I look at it. So unless you have nothing else to spend your points on, don't bother with guard killer and defense against guards. Let me reiterate, these are my opinions only. Not everybody's going to agree with them. Not everybody's going to have the same opinion that I have. That is fine. That is what the world is all about. So, if you have a different opinion, that is great. And that's why we all play different classes, right? So, Mercenaries Bane. They took Mercenaries out of the Borderlands. As far as I know, there are none. So, this is really only going to be useful in EBG. Kind of an oversight, I think, to not make a change to this when they remove the Mercenaries from the Borderlands. That's just my opinion. Not something I would recommend putting in your points into, again, unless you have nothing else to spend them on. Siege Bunker. It's a total of 5% increased siege defense, meaning you take 5% less damage from siege sources. Not so great. It's kind of just something I put in there because I didn't really have much else to spend my points on. It is what it is. Something you want to wait until you're kind of a really high rank for. All these different siege traits are definitely going to be more useful than this kind of thing. Siege Might does the same thing, except for it does 5% more damage instead of 5% less damage on you. It does 5% more damage to your target. And I believe that includes everything, so all people, gates, walls. I think this video is running a bit longer than I anticipated, but that's okay. I want to make sure you guys have all the information you can get. Supply capacity. Oh my goodness. 300 trait points to increase your total supply capacity by 5. Again, my personal opinion, I could not imagine a bigger waste of trait points unless you are at that point, like I said, where you're such a high rank that you just have nothing else to spend points on. Then absolutely go for it. But if you're talking about extremely new to World versus World or mid-level kind of experienced, or even sort of later, higher experience, but, you're still like, let's say, rank 100 or something like that, definitely, I got to tell you, I don't see the point of supply capacity. It's an extra 5 supply. That is wonderful, yes, but the cost is just so high that in a guild Zerg situation, we typically have a lot of supply anyway. You know what I mean? We plan for that. We get supply before we go into a siege so that we have enough for what we want to build. Just not something I can in good conscience recommend that you get. Cannon Mastery, we talked about that. We talked about Ballista. We talked about, it looks like, everything else. So that's the gist of it. That's a basic rundown. Take a look at the traits in more detail, and maybe you'll find something that you disagree with and that you would really like to run that I did not recommend. That is okay. Like I said, everybody has their opinion. I'd like to reiterate one more time. This video is designed for my guild. These are my personal desires and requests for my guildies to run these certain traits because I find them incredibly useful to my guild Zerg. Not everyone will agree with that, and that is okay. I hope that this gave you some information. I hope this made you a little bit, give you a little bit of deeper understanding about the traits in World vs. World. I am Diesel from Sorrow's Furnace and Legion of the Rogue Dragon, and I'll see you in World vs. World.